Questions, we want to submit those in the chat window. If you notice at the bottom right corner of your GoToMeeting box, you'll see a chat box. Just enter your questions there, and then just try to limit those questions to the topic that we're going over today, which will be raw material inventory. So let's keep our questions limited and focused to that, so that for the benefit of all on the webinar. And then again, I will be recording this and make it available after the session. So if you don't already know how, here's a little screenshot that shows you how to enter a question. So just enter your question in the chat window there at the bottom of the GoToMeeting screen, and send it to the organizers. Would actually be the best, or the presenter. If you send it to the presenter, Joe will get it. If you send it to the organizers, both Joe and I will get it, and then I can help moderate the questions for Joe. Our goals for the sessions, or all the sessions really, are to explore the product, review it in detail, explain some options that are available, review existing capabilities. In this case, it's in raw material inventory, and then we might talk about some upcoming changes to this module. We want to get your feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. So be sure to give me your feedback on anything about the information, the content, or the way that we're doing this. We want to make this the best that it can be. So I appreciate any feedback. We want to share our best practices, really, and I think that's one of the most valuable things. Is we deal with a lot of different customers, so we see different ways of doing things, and we want to share those best practices with you, so that you get the benefit of it. And just basically to build knowledge within our customer community. So today's topic is raw material inventory. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joe. Joe, I'm going to make you the presenter. Make sure you mute yourself. Make presenter, Joe Hintz, you are up.
All right, thank you. And thank you everyone for joining. If you cannot see my screen, I'll expect Tony to tell me that. So I'm going to give you basically an overview of raw materials and some of the things that you may not be familiar with. So we're going to go through all the various options you may have when you're processing transactions.
Joe, I cannot see your. So if you've shared your screen, I cannot see it yet.
Okay. Okay. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Thank you.
Okay. So we're going to go through the transactions and some of the options with each one of these warehouse transactions. So some tricks on cycle counting. I'm going to explain a little bit about the global price change. Some query information, and we're going to go through a lot of the finished goods file maintenance routines. I'm going to start with just general capabilities of the icons. I know some of you already have been in the other meetings, but anybody who's new, I want to go through the icons. First of all, you can see my screen has been expanded. So if you click the Help and About, and you can click this Auto Maximize, when you get out and go back in, your screen will be maximized. Once you have your screen maximized, you may want to change the size of some of the fields, or you may shrink the fields. In this example, we only have, whatever 10 fields, so they all appear, but other screens, there's more fields than will appear on the screen, so you may want to rearrange them. But even you might want the material type to be next to the item, for example, so you know what type of material it is. This second icon allows you to output to Excel. So you can see these are the fields that are available in the raw materials file to go to Excel. If you click Default, it transfers a standard list of fields, but then you can add any one of these fields and move them over just by clicking a field and saying Add. For instance, if you wanted period-to-date usage, and it goes to the bottom, and then, oops, I have to say Add, and then you could rearrange those, move them up, move them down, and really arrange them however you want, and then you can just export them to Excel. Plus sign is obviously adding a brand new item. This option is instead of minimizing your screen and then going into another menu option, each user ID can have a separate menu. Sometimes people are adding utilities that are not on any menu, they're hidden, but you want to run that utility consistently for a certain user. You can add that utility to this pop-up menu. So it's a way to be in the middle of a session and then branch out and run another utility and come back and then go back to what you were doing. Obviously, the help is your online help. When you click the question mark, it's a help on the screen. If you go into any one of these screens, you're better off clicking in this area and pressing your F3 key. Then you'll get help on that specific screen. Obviously, if you're within a screen, you press help on a field. This is just your conversion chart, and then obviously the exit window. The other thing I want to explain a little bit more in depth are respect notes. And basically, these are notes, oops, wrong button. These are notes that are detailed for that item. And they can follow to a purchase order, they can follow to a factory ticket, a variety of different things. So the spec notes, you can create any kind of a spec note you want. It's under NZ, and then you can go into spec codes right here. Now, spec codes or specification codes are used both for finished goods and the raw materials. But for instance, the PO notes will transfer to the purchase order and print on the purchase order. The other thing I want to show in the system administration, especially for some of our older clients, we have added new material types. And some of these material types, we do not download those automatically. So if you need a list, we can send you this list. But for instance, anybody who's processing foam would need these material types 1 through 4. Folding carton clients, we've added layer pads and case dividers as an example. Now, in the past, and I don't know, maybe go 25 years ago up to maybe 5 years ago, plates and dies were always purchased as what we call miscellaneous materials. And that's how we did it. So all your plates and dies are miscellaneous materials. There were limitations on that option. So what we did was we added new material types, plates. Number 8 is dies, number 9 is wood. And then as you get down towards the bottom, you'll see X is a rotary die, Y is a flat die. And again, if you need a list, you can have a list. Now the benefit, there's a few benefits to having these, your prep codes separated. And when I say having those prep codes separated, it's when you go into your raw material file and you go to any material and you click update and you have a material type, not prep code, material type, but there are material types for prep codes. And you can see these same codes are here. So I can sort by type here. And here's your pop-up list, which comes from that file. Now the benefit of having a specific material type is when you create a job, instead of it going to a miscellaneous tab, so if I was to go to a job, the prep miscellaneous materials will be under the prep code. And it's not treated as a regular material. With the new material codes, the 6, 7, X, and Z, and so forth, the materials are going to go right here. So you'll be able to more easily have an actual estimated cost, actual cost, and a variance. The other thing that happens with the new material types is when you receive those materials from a purchase order, they can automatically change the color of the schedule board. So when you receive a printing plate or you receive a cutting die or a rotary die, it can automatically integrate to the schedule board and change the color of the waiting for status. So those are new material types, which are really geared around the prep codes, and they're very dynamic, so you may need to add those to your system. The other thing I want to just briefly touch on are categories. These are real categories, I'm sure you're familiar with it, are really mostly just for reporting purposes, so that you can have a category just board, or you can break board down between, bending chip, clay-coated news, single wall, double wall, so you can further break them down to get your reports more exact. The other thing I want to talk about are the cost type fields. Now, these are not categories. These are really how your general ledger interacts with your general ledger. So again, you could have unique, as you can see here, I have a material cost type for SBS board, just like I could have CCN, or I could just have a generic one called boards. But what you'll notice is this is where you're going to put your inventory asset account, a purchase price variance, and most importantly, a consumption account. Now, this may never be used unless you set a NK1 parameter, and I believe it's APGL, oops, AP space GL number, and you can see this character value right here. If I first of all, I'm going to invoke that logic and say yes. And when this is set to expense/vend, and by the way, anytime you want help on an NK1 parameter, you click in the white area here, and then you press the F3 key. And, excuse me, I've got an incoming call that I have to terminate. Anyhow, the logical value turns this on, and the expense/vendor code means you can have multiple GL expense accounts for a specific vendor. If it's defined. If it's not defined, it'll go to the vendor file. So what I mean by that is I go to the vendor file and I find a vendor like International Paper. I will have a GL account listed here, okay, right here. Well, that, if you bought SBS board and clay-coated news and SUS and various types of board, it's all going to go to the same expense account for that in the vendor file. A way to break that out further is by using your material cost types. So you can have different cost types and it will use different expense accounts. We also have an option to accrue your expenses so that when you receive it, instead of it going to an asset account, it's going to an accrued account in your payables file. So where that gets set, obviously, is in your raw materials file. You're going to have a cost type. So like I said, that's going to dictate your expense account that is going to go to your purchase order and then to your payable system. The other thing that I want to mention as far as expenses go, in the finished goods product category file, oddly enough, we actually have a board expense account here. Now, why is it in here? It's in here because you may have a generic material such as, let's just say 200C in the corrugated business. Well, that corrugated C could be used for a stock box, for a custom box, for partitions, for various types of jobs. If you wanted to have that expense account hit, according to the product that's being made, we can have a different expense account being posted based on the job category rather than the raw material type. So that's another little nuance that we have from a GL standpoint. I'm going to go back to the raw materials browser and just explain that we do have, I believe we have a wildcard search down here, but it's not always available, but some of the fields it is available. And you can actually search with an asterisk And let's just say I'm going to click on the item name, so it's going to sort by name. And if I click asterisk, and then let's just say I say medium, or need, and an asterisk, it finds. You'll notice that wildcard search with the asterisk is text sensitive, so it doesn't have to find it on the first letter. It finds any text string that matches that. So if you're not organized, this is very organized here, but if I had one that said 80, medium, 42 pounds, it would, it's more important to search with what we call wildcard search. So when I go into the materials file, I just want to explain for somebody that might be new to our system that the material type basically brings in different fields. So you can see this is a wrap material, but I could come down here and I could say I want material type B for board, and when I go in here, these fields down here are different. One thing I want to notice or have to point out when it comes to board, one thing we have down here are departments. Why do we have departments? Because we can have machine efficiency in our machine file based on caliper thickness. So, but certain caliper or board, we may say it's going to have a different effect. So a specific board code can slow down, in this example, the printing press by 15%, by the die cutter 12%, hand stripping 10%, the gluing department 20%. So this is a way to tweak your machine standards a little further by specific board material. Typically, it might be some kind of a micro flute, or could be a triple wall or a foam or something very heavy or very, very thin, which could cause problems. I'm going to go back and I'm just going to pull up another type of material, such as ink, and you can see these fields are a little bit different now. So it's one big, and what makes a difference is the material type changes your fields that are available. Another one I want to show is, as an example, pallets, which is the letter D. Very important here is this weight factor. This weight is what is the weight of this pallet, and that is used when calculating the total shipping weight of your boxes. So we obviously take the paper weight, the board weight, and in addition to that, we're adding the weight of the pallet, the weight of the cases, and other things of that nature. So I just want to make sure you are aware of that to fill this field in, because that helps calculate your shipping weight for your finished goods. Let's just go to let's just pick up a board material here. Oops, I'm on material type. So let's go SBS 18. And just explain some of these different fields. Now, estimated material has no size. That's the key to estimated material. Estimated material, obviously, when you place a purchase order, you must have a job number, because otherwise we don't know what the size is. As opposed to a real material, so I go back here and I pick a certain roll. When it's a real stock, what we call stock material, now it's going to have either a roll size or it's going to have a sheet size. And the diameter, by the way, we have logic in our material issuing that can, based on the diameter and the thickness of the roll, we can calculate how much was used. So rather than saying we issued 1 ton or 20,000 lineal feet or so many MSF or so many sheets, we actually, if we were dealing with rolls, we could say we could measure what's left on that butt roll. But it's important to know what the diameter, or the core diameter, is when we do that calculation. So if you're going to do a calculation based on the width of the roll, the butt roll, the roll end, you need to have the core diameter. I did explain some of the category fields. I'm not going to explain a bunch of these fields that are obviously common sense and you're used to. I'm going to cancel out of here. I'm going to go into the raw material, or corrugated, I should say, and I'm going to explain for our corrugator people and some people that may be doing multiple paper that get laminated together. You can have a item code such as 200C, and I have a period on the end of it because I know that means I'm making this. And so any kind of material that has a buildup of sheets or rolls, this is what this BOM, bill of material, is used for. So the resin, as you can see, and the starch or your adhesive materials, then I can have up to 8 paper substrates that make up this 200C. The other thing I want to point out here is when we cost out this 200C material, we will use the cost of all this material, specifically the board material. But if you were to build this cost matrix, you can see this then cost matrix is empty right now. If I was to add this and put in a vendor and a price, for instance, then if I say inland here and I save this, now instead of using the cost of the paper rolls, when it calculates an estimate, it would simply use this as if it was a sheet plant calculation. So you have your option there. You can build this, or you can leave this blank, and then it goes to the cost of each one of these material. So that's what the bill of material tab is all about. The inventory tab is one of your more important screens. So first of all, you have the default location. So when you receive material, you can see it can default to this location. But before I say that, there's an NK1 parameter that makes that happen. I'm going to refer that to the receipts program, but it's NK1 is RM warehouse bin. So if you say I want to pull the default location from here, you set that NK1 parameter to RM item, and then it's always going to pull from here. Otherwise, it can be just a default, main floor. But if this was set to a different location, for instance, and it was in row 1, we wanted to always go to that, then we wanted to default to that, then we want to build this right here. Now, the raw materials file has 3 unit of measures. It has a consumption unit of measure and has a purchase unit of measure. The consumption is always the buckets down here. And let me go find a better item that has a quantity on hand, such as, okay. So if I go to this inventory tab, so this is both each and each. I'm buying by the sheet and I'm consuming it by the sheet. So, but whatever this consumption unit of measure, and you notice it's not modifiable, that's because I have quantities on hand. So that means I have 6,905 sheets on hand. But if this consumption unit measure was ton, it would be tons or little feet, MSF, whatever it may be, pounds. Versus the purchase unit of measure. What the purchase unit of measure really has to do with purchasing. So when I go to a purchase order, the field right here, the quantity that I'm buying, is my purchase unit of measure, and it comes from the raw materials file right here. So you can always change it, as you can see, but that's where this default comes from, the raw materials file. Now this unit of measure is your cost unit of measure, and that comes from the raw materials then cost tab. So if I could, oops, let me see, I got it running down here. So your then cost tab is your cost unit of measure. So that's your 3rd unit of measure. Okay. So what we have some other things, auto allocate. What that'll do is if I was to have this specific board material on an estimate, and I created a job, when this button here is clicked, it automatically commits the quantity for that job immediately into this inventory. So for instance, if I had this job, 1763, and I created the job, and this item was on that job, it would immediately commit, which is what it's done. So it committed 26,099 sheets to that job because that auto-allocate was checked. It just means it's stocked. For real material, everything's stocked, but stocked has a different meaning when it comes to material type is miscellaneous. For what that means is miscellaneous is a catch-all for, it could be parts, machine parts, it could be office supplies, it could be anything. It could be trash removal or somebody's shoveling snow. Well, you don't want to have to receive a lot of those materials. If you want to receive before you create a accounts payable invoice, then you want this stock button right here to be checked. That means you cannot add an AP invoice until the product's been received. So if it's not checked, then you could create a raw material for snow removal or something to that effect, and you can go right from a purchase order directly to the AP invoice without having to do a raw material receipt. But stock means you're going to receive it. These are just some fields over here that are user definable: cycle count, production code, purchase. These are fields you define, but the cycle count code obviously works with the cycle count report so that you can print. You can have certain items that you want to cycle count monthly. Other ones may be quarterly, others semi-annual, maybe others annually. So you can have different codes in there, but you make up whatever code you want. But that's what the cycle count. And these other ones are really user definable. The vendor item and the vendor item code is kind of a version 1 option. As you can see here, we can actually have the vendor item number here. So it's really unlimited now. So as many vendors as you may have in the price matrix or cost matrix, you can have a unique vendor item number right in that matrix. So that's really what's used now. This is kind of an older fields. Now, the other important thing here is lot controlled and reorder point. And this really has to do with your buckets of fields down here. And if I could have a little plus sign and a minus sign, basically on hand, which is what's on hand physically in your warehouse, but that only tells you what you can physically see. You don't know what's on order coming in from a purchase order and what's committed to jobs, which gives you available. When available falls below, in this case there's only 806 sheets on hand, falls below my reorder level, it will print on my reorder advice report. So it'll immediately tell me, and then you can buy either the minimum quantity 7,500 to the maximum quantity of 15,000. Now what this screen also has are buckets or buttons. So if I click on hand, I see where it is on hand. If I click on order, I can see what purchase orders are on hand. And if I click committed, I see what jobs the material is committed to. Another button that you may not be familiar with gives you a time frame reference. So if you click the available, it says, okay, we have 6,900 on hand, but what purchase orders and what jobs? So it looks at, okay, this purchase order, and it looks at the due date. I believe there's a due date out here. Yeah, the due date gives you some more information. It says, okay, our balance then will be 10,000. After we run this job, our balance will be short 6,000. And then after we receive this purchase order, so we've got from September 22nd to October 15th, we're going to be below, we're going to be out of stock. So it gives you a forecast or a projection of where your inventory is going. So that's the available button. I don't hear too many people ask about that button, so I wanted to make sure you were aware of it. So let's continue on. The then cost tab, obviously, the blank vendor. All the material must have a blank vendor. The only real exception is board. All the estimates use the blank vendor, so the vendor would know all spaces or nothing defined. So in this case, this blank vendor, if I pick the blank vendor when I'm estimating, it would use $40 per MSF. But when I'm estimating, I could pick specific vendors. But when it comes to ink, glues, palettes, and all that, we're always using the blank vendor. We can't have a gazillion pop-ups when we're estimating. The only pop-up we really have is for the board costs right now. Now, each one of these board vendors has limitations for the supplier you're buying that board from. And so besides the price cost matrix based on the quantity, so this could be up to 5, and you notice I said 5 means 5,000 square feet or 5 MSF. Some people make a mistake by putting 5,000 in there, and that stands for 5,000 MSF, which is why the pricing cost may be wrong. But you can build this little matrix as such, and then you can have different pricing. So what you also have is your supplier's sheet minimums and maximum length and width, and basically you can't estimate if the sheet was less than 10 inches or greater than 70 inches on the width. This vendor would not be an option when you estimate. If you don't fill this in, you could potentially estimate a vendor you can't buy from. You also have penalty charges down here for small sheets, and up here on the top section, the valid roll widths were really geared for the folding carton industry, but basically it's saying these are the valid roll widths that we can buy. So, you know, let's just say I had started at 22 inches, and then I went to 23, and then I went to 24. Well, if the estimate calculated a 22.5-inch sheet, and I was going to use a roll, it would not calculate the cost based on 22.5 inches. It would go to the 23 inches, and my gross sheet width and the gross sheet width would be 23 inches, not 22.5. So, anyhow, that's your VEN cost matrix. POs is just an inquiry that says what purchase orders are outstanding for this item. The jobs file says what jobs. It's kind of a little same as the buttons down here. The bin is where is it located. I just wanted to say one other thing. If you wanted to change the unit of measure, you can't change that unit of measure unless these quantities are 0. So a little workaround, if you have the security, you can actually just delete all these numbers, and then you can see these are available to be updated. And then our system would recalculate the quantities based if you change the consumption unit of measure. And of course, there's the recalc button. Important to, we used to have you delete these. We recommend you do not check these toggle boxes unless you obviously recalc estimated materials is fine. But I would not delete the negative bins anymore. Because when we get to this table here, we can still eliminate 0 and negative. So I would calculate with those toggle boxes open. The last one I want to go through is the history. So the history is going to show you what happened. So you can see this is an issue, this is a receipt, and this is another issue. And it's an issue to job 1636, issue to job 579. Now, the nice thing when you log in as ASI, or if you have security to this, you notice I could actually delete, or I could copy. I could actually rearrange things. So if there was a data entry mistake, we could actually come here and we could make a change to some of these fields. You know, if the unit of measure was wrong or whatever it may be, we can come into this file and we can actually make corrections. So the normal user doesn't see these buttons, but you can if you have the security rights. So let me just keep moving on here. Oh, one thing I do want to mention, estimated material. This happens to be a real material. Estimated material, something like 200C or SBS 18. This bin tabs here, you know, you don't have, if you have a generic material such as 200C, it could be for 1,000 different jobs. Well, we only have one length and one width. And we may have everything dumped into main floor. So we can't, from an inventory standpoint, say, well, what is on hand for this job or that job? But if you use tags, we can actually receive estimated material without issuing it to the job. So we can actually have on-hand tags for estimated material. If you don't use tags, estimated material really can never be on hand. It's going to be received and issued all in one step. But if you use pallet tags, then you can receive the pallets, hold them, and then issue them to the job whenever they need to be issued. Okay? So I want to go through some of the transactions. You can see I've added this transaction right here. So I'm going to redo this just to show you a couple options here. Actually, let me delete each one of these. 547. So I'm going to click the add button, or I could click this up here, and I'm going to type in the 547. And you notice I get a pop-up. I'm not sure if that's an NK1 or not, but I could actually select them all and import them all. It comes in as 0, but I can tab over, and you notice it's defaulting to, and it's an invalid bin. So it's probably, I don't have might not have my NK1 parameter to pull from the raw material item code, so now I've got to go ahead and type it in. But you notice the consumption unit of measure defaults here, but I don't have to use that consumption unit of measure. I can say, well, I received 3 ton board, but notice it converts it into the consumption unit of measure. Also, you notice it says we've exceeded the overrun. I get a pop-up, which is an NK1 parameter, and I think that's RM under over. And I can even get an email. So anytime I have an overrun or I have an underrun, or both, I can actually force an email alert. And that's part of another NK1 called RM emails. But I'm just going to go ahead and do this. And let's just say click update again. I can come over here, and so if I wanted to do, you know, I don't know the conversions here, but I could even run SF and it converts again. Okay, so you can do any unit of measure that the vendor is shipping it to you here, and our system's always going to convert it into the consumption unit of measure. That's just kind of what I wanted to show you there. Now, another option, this is receipts. Obviously, you would post this. Now, I want to move over to one other thing. There's another, when you're receiving, issuing, and other things, if you notice I don't have a tag number here. If you're using our sharpshooter program, you pretty much always want to have a tag number. So there's an NK1 called RM tags, and if you don't have a valid tag number that was created in our sharpshooter program, it'll stop you, and to try to prevent, you know, invalid data. Now, issues, obviously, you know, just a matter of adding an issue, and you're going to put the job number and the item number in. But why is there a PO number here? So the reason that's there is for a unique scenario, and the unique scenario is in purchasing. So if I was to click my plus sign here, and I can go over here, and if I made a mistake, it'd probably give me, oops, that's not a mistake. Let's say X. Oops. Let's cancel that. Let's go back. I don't know if I have a lookup here. Well, actually, you have regular drop ship, and there's actually another one called sheeting orders. Okay, and S is a unique type of purchase order. And I don't know how many people may be doing this, but this is really developed for board but it could be used for another scenario. But basically, if you're buying, this example was we had clients that were buying rolls from a vendor, but they might have shipped it to somebody else to have it sheeted. So the first thing is you've got the cost of the rolls. And then they would place a purchase order for the conversion of those rolls. Once they had a job, they would say, okay, I need to cut those rolls to a certain size. So what that means is you've got the cost of the rolls, but you also have a conversion cost by an outside company that adds to the the cost of that roll. Well, how do you get that cost of the conversion into the cost of the roll? And that's what that purchase order is all about. So what you do is, and I have documentation I can send people on that, but if anybody does it, but when you issue it, you would add, and you would then type in the conversion purchase order, and you would put in the actual sheet. So you actually have two different size board materials. You have the roll, let's say that was SBS 18-22-inch roll, and then you might have a sheet, SBS 18-35. So you're going to sheet it to 35 inches, so you would actually have this purchase order for the sheeting, and then that would combine the cost, and then you would post that, and then you would actually issue the sheets to the job. So it's actually a 5-step process, and that's for anybody who's going to buy something, buy material, paper material, have it shipped to somebody else for some kind of a labor operation so that cost has to get added to the cost of the rolls. So that's why the PO is in the issuing program. Anybody ever wondered about that? The other thing is farm outs, and it's kind of really not, it's kind of geared around raw materials and not geared around raw materials, but when you have farm outs on a job, you need to issue them. They're not really raw materials, they're a purchased item, and you have to issue them to the job here, okay? So under finished goods, this is where you're going to issue farm out material to a job. The next thing I want to explain about issues is under the job costing file maintenance, there's a job control. And there are a lot of materials that you don't want to physically receive, well, you're going to receive it eventually, but you don't want to issue it to every single job. Now, cases may not be one of them, but probably pallets would be one of them. Glue, ink, maybe miscellaneous. But, at the worst, maybe varnish, but probably maybe layer pads, maybe case dividers. But basically, if I set those toggle boxes, all that does is it becomes a default in my job costing system under the materials tab. So I could still go and make changes, but this auto post option right here, if I come over here to auto post, oops. So right here, this auto post. So you can see board is never auto posted, but you can see my bundle strap, my pallet, and other materials can be auto posted. That comes from the job file. Now what does that mean? Well, we have an NK1 parameter called auto issue. I think it's just called auto issue, yeah. Now, when does it auto issue those materials? Well, when I close the job, or it'll do it when I post finished goods. So this is more real time. The other one waits till the complete job is closed. But the net result of that is automatically it's going to know the estimated quantity in relation to the finished goods quantity produced, and the issues will automatically be created here. So in this example, you can see this job auto-issued bundle strap and glue. This is ink, glue, pallets, and straps. This is bundle strap, and this is pallet straps. So that was automatically issued at the quantities based on the finished goods produced. So that happens with an NK1, but it also is a combination of the control file that is used. So, of course, issuing the jobs is pretty standard. So I'm not going to really go into that. The one thing that I do want to kind of touch on that's kind of unique that some people may not know is, as an example, when you're this is just a cycle counting report. This is the actual entering of the cycle count. So if I just stick with that material code, it might not be a good material code, but we'll see. But anyhow, if I go over to the tag number, yeah, it's not a good one, a good example. But let me actually type in a different item here, give you a better example. So let's go to SBS 18-22. So if I was going to cycle count and I had 10, 20 pallet tags, roll tags, whatever it may be, the easiest example is to go to the tag number field and press F1, and you'll notice here's all my tags, and it's got the inventory on hand of each one. If I wanted to, I could select with my control bar individually, or I could use my shift key and say, I want to cycle count all those. Now, what I want to do, I could have also said select all, but I just want to cycle count these. And if I know that I've used these, but for some reason the warehouse didn't issue them to the job, I could say import on hand, which means it's going to import 10,020, or I could say import on hand equals 0. So it's brought all those tags in with one quick little couple keystrokes, but it zeroed them all out. So now if I post that, those tags would be set to 0 on hand. So pressing F1 on the tag number is a nice little trick. The other transaction I just want to explain is we have the option when you're, let me use one of those actually that I just created. If I just go over here. If I want to use that SBS 22 and I want to do a transfer, I could actually do a partial transfer. So I could actually say from tag, and I could, if I was to, I would transfer it obviously to another warehouse or to another location. But let's say if I'm going to go to Texas, oops, let me find one. That's not a good lookup. Oops, my mistake. Okay, now it's brought in the whole quantity, but I could do a partial tag and if that was the case, it would create a different tag. So you could actually do a partial tag. It's canceled out of that. Let's see. So the other thing I just want to touch on is the global price change. The estimate, once you have an estimate created, those prices go to the quote. Obviously, the global price change in estimating updates the quote. But if you want any new estimate, if you want the price to be changed and you have a board price increase or decrease, you have to affect the cost of the material. So you have to pick, in this example, you would have to pick the material type, and then you could, this is like a month, or you can give it some kind of a code which gets updated in the raw materials file. But you could do it by a specific vendor. So if I just want to say stone to stone, and I said stone was increasing their prices by 10%, it would do all of stone. But if you want to do a certain item, you could do a certain item range. And that's going to, update the pricing for all the board that has stone defined as a vendor. And then, of course, you can always do an undo if you had done something incorrectly. The last thing I want to touch on before I end this session is reporting. And a lot of people are not familiar with a lot of the options we have. So first of all, you notice I have columns here. And this is what we call our report writer. Every report in our system has this embedded now. Well, if you want to, now these are all the extra fields that this report now can report on. I've already got just these fields over here that I've selected. If I wanted to move this up or down, if I wanted the warehouse to be first, I can move it up or down. I can export it to Excel. Well, this report writer option is available on all of reports. In order to invoke that, you have to go to NK1 Reports. And if you go to the Browse, and down here I would click the character value and I'd say M, and here's all of my reports for materials. And you notice it's MR1, 10, 11, and they're all set to yes. So you're going to click the view, and if you want to use the report writer, you click logical value yes. And that's the only way you're going to get new fields. So when we add new fields to a report, we do not change the report anymore. We add it here, and then the customer will put it on the report, their report, wherever they want it. Now, keep in mind, these reports are by user ID. So each user ID, whatever they enter on this report list and what fields they pick, are saved only for that user ID. And the only other thing that I want to mention is you can limit reports by user ID. So in the user file, you can define customers by user, so they would only be able to run reports. If the raw material was, maybe it was by job as an example, then it would have a customer identity to it. Then you could limit that report based on the customer. So that's an NK1 parameter as well. And with that last feature explained, that's all I have for the raw material session for now. So I'm going to turn this back over to Tony to ask questions, and hopefully I can answer the questions. If not, we will get answers to you.
All right. Thank you, Joe. Great session there. So yeah, I do have a couple of questions here that have been asked. I want to present those to you. So one question is that you were talking about the stub roll diameter. This person said that I think you were mistaken. Maybe you're talking about the core diameter. How do you calculate linear feet off of the core diameter?
They would measure the end of the roll. They would measure the width of that roll, and they would be entering that. We use that, I think, in physical counts, and I have to verify that, but I'm pretty certain we use it when we do issuing. So if I was to issue, and I'd have to pick the right job. If you issued a SBS 18, for instance, just as I was going over here, you could put in the diameter as a parameter. I'd have to go find a job. But basically, you're going to put in your purchase unit to measure, and I think it's called diameter, DIM. So you would put in the dimension of the diameter that's left on that roll, and then it would look at the internal core that the paper is wound around, and do that's, you know, it takes the difference between that internal core and then the total length or total width to do its calculation. So hopefully I explained that.
Okay. So I'll let them, if that did not answer the question, you know, I'd ask them to please go ahead and enter some more information or another question in the chat box. In the meantime, did you state that the quantity 2, if you put 5 in the quantity 2 field, that represents 5,000?
Depends on the then cost tab. Let me just go to a board material. It depends on what this is up here, the purchase unit of measure. So if I say 5, it means 510, 5 ton. If this was in MSF, then it would be 5 MSF. It would mean, which is 5,000 square foot.
Yes, that sounds right. So,
but we don't have square foot as a unit of measure. So what I'm saying is some people may accidentally do this when they're first building our system, and if they did this, thinking these were sheets, right? Well, what that means is this is 5,000 MSF. It's not 5,000 square feet. So this is a common mistake. So what they have to do is they have to come back and get rid of all those zeros if this is supposed to be MSF. Okay? So the unit of measure is what the quantity is all about.
Okay, that makes total sense to me. So that was from Robin. Robin, if that did not answer your question, then send me another chat question. That's all the questions I have in the chat box so far. Are there any other questions that anyone would like to enter in the chat box so that Joe can answer those for you? Anything that you're confused about, anything that you'd like to see again, just enter a chat message there and we'll go ahead and get to that. I guess in the meantime, Joe, can you think of any other common questions that may come up in your experience?
No, not off the top of my head now.
Okay. All right. So yeah, go ahead and if anyone has a question, go ahead and enter that in the chat box. Would love to answer any other questions that anybody has. So let's give it just a minute or two, Joe, here, and see if anybody else has a question. Just a reminder, I did record this session, so you will be able to go back and review at your own pace, at your own leisure. You can go to our YouTube channel. I'll send you a link. You'll be able to go to our YouTube channel, and just like watching a YouTube video, you'll be able to see the presentation again, fast forward, and so forth. So I should be posting that. I had a question here, that someone came in late and asked me when I'll post that to the web. I should have that up later today or no later than end of day tomorrow. So feel free to circulate that to your folks, and we'll make sure that everybody can see the presentation again. And again, it gives you the chance to pause, rewind, go fast forward, and so forth.
That was diameter, by the way. So if I said 80 and I said DIA for diameter, notice it converts it.
Okay.
So I put in 8 inches as the diameter and it converts it. But it needs that internal core size as well to do the proper calculation.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Well, it appears that we don't have any other questions, and we're right at the top of the hour. So if anyone has a question, go ahead and enter it now. If not, wait, we have a question. We have a question. So here the question is, when doing issues, where would the individual tag numbers be listed for individual jobs on what report? You want me to read that again, or did you get it?
Well, they're entering the tags here, obviously, on the raw material issue program. What report would it be listed? We have a various tag reports. We have 9, which are stock tag reports. But if you wanted it by what was issued to the job, it's probably more of a job report. I guess I don't totally understand the question. But you got a history, and you could put in a job here, and tag number. Let me see if tag number is an option. Yeah, tag number is an option. So if I was to put in issue tags here, I could say what was issued to this job on this report. So the transaction history report would be one of the options where they would have the tag number. Again, if they have the report writer, I don't know if the tag number is on the standard report or not, but on the report writer version, they can have the tag number here. They could pick a certain job, and they could say, I just want issues, and they would know what tags were issued to that job.
Great. Okay. That came from our friends at Accord Carton. So Accord Carton, if that did not answer your question, send us another chat message and we'll see if we can drill in a little deeper.
Roll stock, they do have roll stock reports here as well. What's on hand? Here's another one, roll stock consumed, number 10. Now, that's just, I don't know if that's going to show, that's not showing the job number though.
Right.
As this one did.
Okay. They said they will try those reports, Joe, so thank you very much. Are there any other questions that anyone has that we'd like to go over? If so, please go ahead and enter those in the chat box. We'll get right to them. So Joe, I think we're done. I think we've answered all the questions for today. So we're going to go ahead and wait. We may have one more question. Hold on. We have a question coming in. I think we may have a group of people in a conference room, so they're gathering some questions here. So hold on. Okay. So how do you de or unallocate stock from a job? Deallocate or unallocate job?
Okay. Basically, you go to the job file, and you go to the materials tab. And by the way, this is something else I wanted to. There's one of those NK1 parameters on auto issue and RM issue. You could actually pick a stock sheet here and say, well, I want to pick all my stock, my 200C material. And if I pick that that particular one, besides, picking that material, I could auto issue at the same time. So I could pick a stock sheet or stock rolls and issue it to the job here via the sheet calc button, and that would issue it at the same time, and I could actually pick what tags I wanted to issue. Now, allocating it, you can see this is auto post to set to no, so it's not committed. The process of allocating is clicking this button, and now I've got 178, so it's a small order obviously, 178 sheets committed. If I wanted to decommit, I would then click the allocate button again, and then it would deallocate it. You notice it's now the letter N for no, for it's not committed, and that automatically updates the raw material file. So it's in the materials tab, allocate, we'll allocate it, and then click the allocate again, and it'll deallocate it. But you can also issue directly from here as well with the sheet calc button.
Excellent. Thank you, Joe. Did that answer your question to our friends at Accord? If not, enter me a chat there in the chat box or another question. Or if
and they
anyone
can
else
also anybody can also just email help or email me directly. So we don't have to do it via the Ask the Expert session. We could do one-on-one questions, via help@advantzware.com or joe@advantzware.com.
Absolutely. Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I think that answered the question for them, Joe. So I don't see any other questions. I think we're going to go ahead and call it. Thank you very much for attending today. We really enjoyed these sessions, and we appreciate your feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. I will be, ending this recording, and we will have it posted up on the web for your review very shortly. So thank you again for attending, and we will see you next time. Goodbye.